How you doing? I'm CK with UPP Turbo Systems, and today we're going to be going over some of the revisions that we've done to the C6 Z06 kit. Now this kit does also fit on the regular standard C6, but we designed it specially for the Z06 because of the dry sump oiling system. So some of the revisions now, we include capability for going full frame T4 turbos, and we've reconfigured some of the stuff in order to get those to fit. So you're still going to need to watch the original video to do majority of the install, and that walks you through how to. This video here is just going to highlight some of the changes that we've done and some of the revisions to update it in terms of the installation progress. Alright, now first thing we'll go over is the manifold install. Now depending on the size of the turbos, with the T4 turbos, we are modifying the power steering bracket down here. That's standard with the kit. With the T4s, they're a little bit bigger, so you're going to have to shave that power steering bracket down just a hair to actually get the frame of the turbo itself to fit under here. Alright, we'll go ahead and start on the intercooler piping here. Now we'll start on the driver's side. It's going to be laid out, and it is the 2.5 to 2.25 inch 90-degree reducer. Now if you're using the 5871 turbos, this will be a 2 to 2.25. We did upgrade the intercooler piping on this one to 2.25 inch over the 2 inch. Next is going to be the double 45, the 45-degree silicone coupler, the long 90, and then that's going to adapt to 2.25 to 2.5 inch going directly into the intercooler. So right over here on the driver's side, we're going to start, we want the turbo clocked so it's facing horizontal here, pointing towards the driver's side. We're going to do a 2.5 inch to 2.25 inch reducer bend, and that's going to go straight down. Now we are going to cut a hole through the inner fender well right here, so we're going to pop out on the other side. And down here in the fender well is where we're going to go to the double 45. And that's going to come right through here and go through the existing hole under the bucket for the headlight. Next is going to be the 45-degree coupler, and then the long 90 with the longer end pointing up. That's going to go right into the intercooler with the 2 to 2.25 or 2.5 to 2.25 reducer there. Over here on the passenger side, we're going to start off with a 2.5 to 2.25 inch reducing bend on a 45-degree angle. Next is going to be the 4590 pipe. And the last one, that goes into a straight coupler, which is going to adapt the two of these together. And then the long multi-bend pipe is going to be the last one, going into the 2.25 to 2.5 inch silicone reducer here. So it's going to come off. We want this turbo here on the passenger side to be pointed kind of a 45-degree angle downwards. We're going to have the reducers going to come off of that, and that's going to go directly into this pipe here, the 4590. And the 45 sits up on the top. This is going to go down right behind the radiator itself, just like that. So if you look inside there, it kind of looks like this. Coming off of that one is going to be the straight coupler here, and then the multi-bend pipe here will actually come right around the side, and so we're coming just in front of the sway bar here, right up and into the intercooler using the 2.25 to 2.5 inch reducer. Here's a different view from the driver's side underneath, and you can see where we're coming down with the double 45 here, the 45-degree silicone, and then the long 90. Now you do need to trim it out a little bit on the underneath on the bucket here, so that way this tucks up against the frame rail, and also on this hole going through here. We want this to basically tuck up in there as tight as possible, that way we're not hitting the tires on it when we're at full lock turning. So when everything kind of tucks tighten up against the frame rail there. Alright, now over here on the passenger side, we're coming down with our 4590 pipe. We're going to go right behind the sway bar here, and that's going to come to our straight coupler here. It's going to zigzag around everything up in the suspension and come right up to our intercooler here. Alright, now for the oil feed line portion, we did have it where it would daisy chain. It would go from the oil feed block here down on the bottom, right by the oil filter, up to one turbo and then over to the next. We are changing that up, and we're going to revise that. So we're actually going to split it into two independent oil lines right here at the oil feed block. So it'll be the oil feed block coming out the top of it, a 90-degree bend, the 1.5 inch nipple into our 3-way female T. From there, it's 1/8 inch to -4, adapters on the top and bottom, and those are going to be our outputs to each of the turbos. Now the oil feed lines, there's a long one and a short one. The long one's obviously going to go over to the passenger side, the short one over to the driver's side. So the short one from the driver's side's got the straight, that's just going to come right off of it here and shoot up to the turbo. The other one for the passenger side has the 135. That's going to come off the bottom like that. That'll reroute that line and turn it around and shoot it back upwards. That one's going to go around behind the engine and then over to the passenger side turbo. Now on the turbo side of the line for both of these, it's just going to be a 90-degree fitting. Those are going to drop right into the turbos themselves. So again, it's not that big of a change. We just changed from going with one oil line coming off the feed block to 2 independents, and that way we're not daisy chaining it actually at the turbo itself. All right, now for the oil return lines, we've made those separate and independent as well. So we're actually going to have 2 separate oil return lines instead of bringing them together, teeing them, and then running one back into the block or into the pan. These are fairly simple and straightforward as far as how they're set up. Everything about them is going to be 45 degrees on either side, so they can go either direction. The driver's side is the 16-inch one, and the passenger side is slightly longer, and it's going to be 18.5 inches. So you can see the passenger one just a little bit more than the driver's. So coming off of the turbo, we have the female adapter that's going to bolt to the turbo. You're going to have the 45-degree adapter here coming off the turbo. That's going to go right into your 45 line here. And this is simply just going to come back and drop down straight into where the oil pan is. It's going to be very, very similar on both sides. So we'll go ahead and show you what it looks like once it's actually in the car and installed. And that way you can see exactly where we're tapping into the oil pan itself. All right, now over here on the passenger side, you can see we're coming just over the AC compressor there, and we're going to come down to our 45 into the pan right here. Now the 45 on the turbo is going to be pointing straight backwards in this direction, and then our 45 on the line is going to attach to that and bring the line backwards. On the pan here, we're kind of coming in at an angle, and then the 45 in the pan is facing up. Now the 45 in the pan here is just above the 2 dry sump lines here. In fact, you can see there's 1 bolt there, and we're about 1 inch in front of that. Now you want to drill that into the pan up as high as you can go while still being able to actually rotate and spin the 45-degree fitting. And what I mean by that is, as you screw this in, you don't want this piece as it's turning around to be hitting on the lip of the pan. So you want to come down just barely enough that that's going to clear and you can actually rotate it in there. But ideally, we want this to be up higher than the level of oil in the pan itself. Now on the dry sumps, it's not that big a deal because the system should be constantly pulling the oil out of the pan, but for the guys doing the wet sump, you want to definitely get it up as high as possible. All right, now over here on the driver's side, it's going to be the same thing. So the 45 going into the turbo is going to be facing backwards just like this. We're going to attach the 45 on the line to that. We're going to come right straight down and drop it right into the pan here. Now this is the second bolt right here in front of the oil filter. So we have 1 bolt, 2 bolt, and just in front of that and just below that is where we're going to go with the 45 fitting. And again, same thing with this one. We want to make sure that we have enough. You don't want to put it clear up here to where you're hitting on stuff. We want to drop it down as high as we can, but drop it down to where you're going to have some clearance room. What's usually the best on these oil lines is actually attach it to the top side first, run the line, attach the fitting to the bottom side here, and then just kind of play with it and see where on the pan exactly it lies, because that's going to give you the best spot to actually drill and tap it. That way, I mean, if we took this one back another 1/2 inch, that might stretch the line a little too hard, or if we're forward too much, it might bind it up and kink it. So if you attach the line and assemble it all together, basically where it's going to sit in the car naturally, and then figure out where your best point to drill into the pan is, that is generally the most optimal way to do that. Okay, one of the last changes that we made is actually going to be the exhaust itself. Then we used to terminate this with V-band clamps, which would require you to actually go and cut up the exhaust and weld it on there. Most of what we found is that most of the aftermarket X pipes actually have slip fittings on them. So we built this for that, because with this kit we highly recommend going to an aftermarket full 3-inch exhaust as it is anyway. This time, or with it doing it this way, it's going to bolt up to majority of the aftermarket exhausts. So instead of having the V-bands, these should slip fit right into your existing exhaust. Now if you are still trying to use the stock exhaust, you will have to basically cut and modify your stock exhaust and mate it to this one. In doing that, you're going to need some sort of a reducer on it anyway. Like I said, we highly recommend a full 3-inch exhaust. That's going to be the best bet for performance on this. And since our downpipes are already in 3-inch, you really need to do that. Going back to a 2.5-inch is actually going to create a bottleneck right here anyway, and we really want to stay away from that. We've seen gains as high as 80 horsepower to the wheels in the car by switching from the 2.5-inch exhaust over to the 3-inch exhaust after these 3-inch downpipes, because we don't want to bottleneck it back up there. All right, one of the other revisions that we've made is actually internal dump on the wastegate versus dumping it out. Before we were going out the side, drilling through the side and dumping it into the wheel well area. Now we're recirculating that back inside. It's not going to make too big of a change as far as the installation on it. Everything's going to bolt up rather similar, the same, except instead of having the external dump, it's going right back in. So when you actually bolt up the downpipe, it's best leave this V-band here a little bit loose until you get the wastegate on there and started, and that way you can make sure everything's in proper alignment. All right, next part we're going to go after is actually the heat shield that we made for the fuse box back here to help protect it. So the fuse box is going to get moved back into this back corner, and we're going to mount it with this Z bracket here. This is going to go down and actually attach to the dry sump system here, and it's going to bolt up on this back corner here. So we've just taken it and slid it from its normal position back to here. And then the coolant reservoir that's bolted across the strut tower here, it's going to share the same bolt on this one here, and we'll bolt that down like that, and then we'll use 2 sheet metal screws to attach it to the plastic firewall there. So this is going to sit and wrap around the fuse box just like that. Now if you're worried about heat, like this is a higher horsepower application, you can see we've lined the inside of this with additional heat shielding to help protect it even more. You can line the actual fuse box itself and just give some more padded room on there to keep that to keep even more heat out of it essentially. But all we're trying to do is essentially block the heat and protect the heat from the manifold and the downpipe from going up into the fuse box here. So we'll go ahead and get this bolted together, and then we'll show you what it looks like once it's in the car. All right, now here you can see we've got it installed inside the car. So the fuse box, again, it's bolted up with the Z bracket right on the back side here. That's what's going to hold it in place. The heat shield itself is using the existing stud down in this one here, and then as well as 2 sheet metal screws going right into the firewall there. That way this is nice and secure up here. If you need to, you can add extra heat wrapping materials, either like you can see here we've done on the inside of the heat shield, or to the fuse box itself, just to kind of help give it more heat protection and keep the heat out of this entirely from the headers and that over here. Well, that about sums it up for the installation today. So just slight revisions from what it was last time. And again, if you guys ever have any issues or have any questions, don't be afraid, shoot us an email, give us a call, we're here to help. Thanks a lot.